While I'm looking at each section of the video for flow, I'll also look at what I can cut out. When I'm making pieces for social media, I'm usually aiming for the finished piece to be 2-ish to 5-ish minutes of solid, engaging content. Thinking about that opening section we looked at in the last section, I haven't really edited much of anything out yet. We just reorganized it for flow. And at this stage, so early in the edit, I'm not gonna edit anything out, not yet, because it's such a short section. Now that might change as I go along and I had to get more critical, but for now, we're gonna leave it as it is. These early edits, I'm looking for the obvious things to get rid of. Two things mainly, extraneous ideas and repetitions. Let's start with extraneous ideas, or diversions. Most diversions will fit into two types, the big ideas and then the little ones. So let's talk about the big things first. In an earlier lesson, I talked about a video I made for a women's center. In that interview, the lead woman was really passionate about theater, and she very engagingly presented some ideas to include a theater in the space. But the concept of the piece was a space for women in need, and many other things that they were providing were food security, shelter for kids, counseling, and job training. The theater, well, it made for a nice section of the video, but it felt small compared to everything else in the piece. The other ideas, they impacted the viewer so much more effectively. But it's hard to cut out the good stuff, and this was good stuff. My trick, and I do this all the time, is to move that stuff with a title so I know what the section is to the end of the video. I'll put some black video onto the timeline as a spacer, and anything I want to go back and revisit, well, that goes after that space. That way, if I see a way to add it back in, it's still there, staring me in the face even. As I scroll through the timeline, it'll remind me about that section constantly because it's right there, and so I'm always thinking about how to shoehorn it back in. Since I'm not deleting the footage, I'm just moving it. It's kind of a dumb psychological trick that I play on myself. It doesn't feel as bad to move it as it does to delete it, so it's a little easier to do. Right now, when you're making all of the other decisions and the video's still not working yet, the last thing you want to do is make yourself feel bad about removing a section that, well, it might actually be good and you're not sure that you don't want it yet. But later, when the piece is starting to work, then you can remove all that stuff at the end, the stuff that doesn't fit into this piece, because you know that the video works without that section. Another quick example, let's go back to the Dean piece, the boy with the health problems who took the music workshop. If I were to re-edit that today, I'd probably edit out the dog. Here's a bit of that section to remind you.
Dean has a service dog named Nobby.
He's half poodle and half lab. I always call him Labradoodle. If I'm starting to have seizures, Nobby goes with mom and tell mom, dad, that I'm having a seizure.
I remember what we were thinking when we put that section in, that it would be a little odd for there to just be a dog running around, and we wanted to explain that as well as let the dog kind of show us how serious Dean's condition is. But in retrospect, I think that's all it's there. It's fairly obvious. And in Dean's story about this workshop, the dog just makes that piece 15 seconds longer than it needs to be without really adding anything. It's a diversion from the main story that doesn't need to be there. So now let's look at some of the little diversions. These might be parts of sentences and stray thoughts that we can remove. For this, let's look at a later section of the child advocacy video. Here's the original unedited clip.
They're the ones that have the investigative authority over these cases. We are, the CAC is more of a tool for all of these partner agencies to use to be a one-stop shop, if you want to call it that. I don't know if that's the best term, but to really be that collaborative facility. And we have no power to arrest. We have no power to investigate. Our job is truly to do what's in the best interest of the children in these cases, to do that fact-finding interview, provide advocacy services for these families, and provide mental health and medical exams if they're needed.
And here's the edits that we made. Notice I took out some of the stumbles and the pauses as she speaks, but also the diversions, like when she commented on whether one-stop shop is really the right phrase that she should use. That derails the larger statement of what the center does. So I got rid of it.
They're the ones that have the investigative authority over these cases. The CAC is more of a tool for all of these partner agencies to use to really be that collaborative facility. Our job is truly to do what's in the best interest of the children in these cases, to do that fact-finding interview and provide mental health and medical exams if they're needed.
Again, those jump cuts, they make it seem pretty choppy, especially when she says partner agencies, which she emphasizes because of the original context. But Once there's B-roll and music on it, it should work pretty well. Even the partner agency line will likely sound better once it's a part of that whole mix. It was actually more jarring until I turned the volume down on just those words so that it doesn't jump out quite so much. Sometimes I'll even go in with a tool that can shift the pitch of sounds and bring that higher pitch down just a bit to help it fit in, but I don't think we're going to need that here. So the next thing we want to look at is removing repetitions, and we'll dig into that in the next lesson. But the key to remember about diversions is to really just keep in mind, what is this story about? Anything that isn't that doesn't move this story forward, no matter how good it is, it probably needs to go away. Again, the end of the timeline is a great way to do it, and it's a little less painful until you start to see the great effect that tightening your story can have.